And what that leads to, from a biochemical perspective, when you look at this disease at the cellular level, it's basically a disease of insulin resistance, microinflammation, excess oxidation. Those are the underlying mechanisms that fuel diabetes. Ironically, those are the same mechanisms that fuse heart disease, that fuel cancer, that fuels stroke, arthritis, osteoporosis, kidney failure. Now, is it a coincidence that the diseases that I just named happen to be the top 7 diseases, afflictions in America? No, I don't think it's a coincidence. And when you look at some of the other complications, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, chronic fatigue, they're all related, they're all connected to the same disease. The good news is you can choose to be well or be sick. You have that type of control. But what is diabetes? There are 3 types of diabetes. Type 1 is the autoimmune disease, and actually that is the only diabetes, by the way. Type 2 was misnamed. They should have gave it some other name. Call it gobbledygook, doesn't matter. But by calling it type 2 diabetes, you connect the 2 diseases, and both diseases follow a similar protocol, drugs. And gestational diabetes is just a temporary form of type 2. Every person in this room already knows the answer to beating this disease. And once I give you the answer, you're going to go, I knew that. Because I'm going to take a wild guess and make the assumption that everyone in this room got to 8th grade. And in 8th grade science class, we were taught about the unit of life. The unit of life is a cell. And when that cell is happy, you're happy. And when you're happy, you're healthy. But when that cell is sick, guess what? You're sick. And you develop diseases. And what happens to a diabetic is the outer shell of that cell becomes damaged. It becomes inflamed. And the insulin receptors lose the ability to recognize insulin. If the insulin receptors cannot recognize insulin, then glucose can't get into the cell. So insulin acts like a key that opens up the garage door to let in the glucose. But if the key doesn't work, can't open the door. And if the door doesn't open, then the glucose backs up into your bloodstream and your blood glucose continues to rise. The pancreas then secretes out more insulin because it sees that your blood glucose level is continuing to rise. Consequently, most diabetics develop excess insulin within their bodies. And you can't produce energy. You're tired all the time. Your body is unable, not only is your body unable to absorb nutrients, your body can't get rid of the toxins from the chemicals that you're consuming. In addition to that, your cells lose the ability to communicate. It's a new science, maybe some of you have heard about it, glycobiology. And it talks about the ability of your cells to talk to each other, to communicate. And if your cells lose the ability to communicate, you're going to be sick. This chart represents the insulin glucose profile for a non-diabetic. When a non-diabetic eats food, their blood glucose level rises, then the insulin rises, but it all levels off somewhere between 80 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. In a non-diabetic's body, the glucose level continues to rise, insulin levels continue to rise, and they never return to normal. They stay at very high levels. And what's important to understand about that, if your body has excess insulin, then you have the probability of developing microinflammation. Microinflammation is a precursor to the formation, well, your body formulates homocysteine, which leads to plaque formation inside the endothelial wall of the arteries. That leads to atherosclerosis and other cardiovascular conditions. And what this just represents is the vicious cycle that the diabetic's body is going through. Every time a diabetic eats food, glucose levels go up, insulin levels goes up, blood glucose crashes, it goes back up. And it's a continual vicious cycle. And the body eventually is depleted. Most type 2 diabetics have low levels of chromium, low levels of biotin, low levels of vitamin E, low levels of vitamin C. And so if you begin to think about it, diabetes is a disease of cellular starvation. The cells are dying because they're not obtaining the proper nutrients. The impact of diabetes, it impacts the population. We have 21 million diabetics in the United States. We've got another 41 million who don't know it. There's 170 million diabetics worldwide. You have this disease has become the #1 chronic disease in America. #1. Anybody know what's the #1 killer disease in America? Anybody? Heart disease. That's #1. What's #2? Cancer. #3? Very good. Actually, they are. They're moving up the charts. #3 is stroke. #4 is diabetes. Diabetes is #4, but it feeds the other 3. And diabetes, if you probably looked at the data differently, you could make a case that it's really the #1 killer. On a personal level, because most people, they really don't care that there's 21 million diabetics. When they first told me, at that time I think it was 17 million, I didn't care. I don't care about the other 17 million people. But on a personal level, this disease affects you physically, emotionally, financially, on many different levels. I did a financial cost analysis back before I had a book. When someone said, would it be worth it to spend extra money to eat healthy? And in their mind, it cost more money to eat healthy. And that's a myth. And I did a model for a senior citizen group because as some of you may be aware, senior citizens in this country have to wrestle with a very important decision every month. Do I take my little Social Security check and buy drugs or food? But they got to buy the drugs because the bodies are biochemically dependent on the drugs. And that puts them in a corner in terms of how much quality food they can buy. And what I told them is, I don't care.